Good morning, class 12. In accountancy class, today's our chapter is accounting ratio. So, first of all, students, the meaning of accounting ratio. What do you mean by accounting ratio? Accounting ratio means the relationship between two figures expressed in arithmetical term called ratio. The relationship between two figures which are expressed in arithmetical term known as the accounting ratio, and ratio can be expressed in the percentage, in times, right? Ratio can be expressed in the percentage, in the times, and in the fraction, right? In the percentage, in the time, in the fraction, or in the proportionate. So when the relationship between two figures are shown in the arithmetical way, that is accounting ratio, and it can be shown in the percentage, it can be shown in the proportion, and it can be shown in the times or fraction. So that process will be known as the accounting ratio. Basically, accounting ratio are divided into four categories. These are number 1, liquidity ratio, number 2, solvency ratio, number 3, activity or turnover ratio, and number 4, profitability ratio, right? So let us start the first category of accounting ratio, that is liquidity ratio or short-term solvency ratio. Basically the motive to calculate the liquidity ratio is to find out whether the firm is able to pay their current liabilities or not, whether the firm is able to pay their liabilities or not in the short terms, right? So for that purpose we have to find out the liquidity ratio, and short-term solvency ratio is also called the liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio are divided into two parts, that is दो तरह की रेशियो बेटे लिक्विडिटी रेशियो में हम कैलकुलेट करते हैं. तो वैसे तो अकाउंटिंग रेशियो की 4 कैटेगरी है, लिक्विडिटी रेशियो, सॉल्वेंसी रेशियो, एक्टिविटी और टर्नओवर रेशियो और प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी रेशियो. लेकिन लिक्विडिटी रेशियो हम ये जानने के लिए करते हैं कि बिजनेस शॉर्ट टर्म में अपनी लायबिलिटी को पे कर सकता है या नहीं. Basically, liquidity ratio are divided into two parts, that is current ratio and liquid ratio. So let us know how to calculate the current ratio. Current ratio also known as the working capital ratio. Current ratio को बेटे हम working capital ratio भी बोलते हैं, and the formula to calculate the current ratio is current assets upon current liability. The formula to calculate the current ratio is current assets upon current liability, and the ideal current ratio is 2:1. It means current assets should be twice of current liability. Current assets current liability की डबल होनी चाहिए, दोगुनी होनी चाहिए, twice होना चाहिए. So it's a ideal current ratio, and if the current ratio is less than from 2:1, it's not a good position of the business, and if the current ratio is more than 2:1, it's also not a good position of the business. If the more than 2:1, it means stock and debtors are to be increased, so it's also a harmful situation for the business when the stock it means unsold stock and the debtors are to be increased, right? So let us understand how can we find out the current ratio. Basically current assets upon current liability, and the current assets includes cash in hand plus cash at bank plus current investment plus bills receivable plus stores and spares plus inventory में stores and spares तो include होगा बेटा, लेकिन loose tools are excluding from the inventory. When we find out the current assets and including the inventory but excluding the loose tools, तो जब current assets में हम inventory को include करेंगे तो loose tools को हम क्या करेंगे, माइनस कर देंगे. plus short term loans and advances plus prepaid expenses plus accrued income plus debtors less provision plus marketable security and the short term investment is the same thing. So current asset equal to cash in hand, cash at bank, current investment, BR, stores and spares, inventory, excluding loose tools, short term loan, prepaid expenses, accrued income, debtors and marketable security. And the current liabilities includes bank overdraft, bills payable, creditors, outstanding expenses and income received in advance, and plus unclaimed dividend, calls in advance and short term provision, it means provision for taxation is also included in it. So current liability include bank overdraft, bills payable, creditors, outstanding expenses, income received in advance, unclaimed dividend, calls in advance, and provision for taxation, right? So the second category of liquidity ratio is quick ratio. First ratio is current ratio and the second ratio is quick ratio or acid test ratio भी बोलते हैं बेटे इसको, quick ratio and acid test ratio. And the formula to calculate the quick ratio is liquid assets upon current liability. Liquid assets upon current liability. And the ideal quick ratio is 1:1. And the liquid assets can be find out current investment plus bills receivable plus debtors plus cash in hand plus bank balance plus short term loan and advances, right? और सारी की सारी एसेट्स को हम ऐड कर देंगे, लेकिन अगर उसमें हम इन्वेंट्री और प्रीपेड एक्सपेंसेस को माइनस कर दें तो हमारे पास लिक्विड एसेट्स आ जाएगी. यानी कि प्रीपेड एक्सपेंसेस और इन्वेंट्री को छोड़कर अगर हम सारी एसेट्स को ऐड करते हैं तो लिक्विड एसेट्स है, या फिर करंट एसेट्स minus inventory minus prepaid expenses is the formula to calculate the liquid ratio or the acid test ratio. Let us understand these both of the ratio by an example, and here is an example number 3. In the example number 3, we have to find out the quick ratio and the current ratio with the following item, and the item is given cash and cash equivalent inventory including loose tools, machinery, computer, trade payable, bills receivable, long term sources, short term sources, and the liability for current taxation, liability for future taxation, bank overdraft, dividend payable, outstanding expenses and prepaid expenses. This item is given in the example number 3, and we have to find out the current ratio and the quick ratio. So first of all, the formula of current ratio is current assets minus current assets upon current liability. And in the example number 3, current assets can be find out cash plus इन्वेंट्री. इन्वेंट्री में से बेटे लूज टूल्स माइनस कर देंगे, इन्वेंट्री एक्सक्लूडिंग लूज टूल्स प्लस ट्रेड रिसीवेबल प्लस शॉर्ट टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लस प्रीपेड एक्सपेंसेस. इट मींस 46,000 प्लस 2,60,000 एक्सक्लूडिंग लूज टूल्स इन्वेंट्री, अमाउंट ऑफ इन्वेंट्री प्लस 2 lakh plus 50,000 plus 20,000. So the amount of current assets is 5,76,000. And the current liability can be find out by the formula trade payable plus current taxation. करंट टैक्सेशन करंट लाइबिलिटी में इंक्लूड होगा बेटा, फ्यूचर टैक्सेशन हम इंक्लूड नहीं करेंगे, ओनली करंट टैक्सेशन विल बी इंक्लूडेड इन इट. सो द करंट लाइबिलिटी इक्वल टू ट्रेड पेबल प्लस करंट टैक्सेशन प्लस बैंक ओवरड्राफ्ट प्लस dividend plus outstanding expenses. It means 1,70,000 plus 30,000 plus 60,000 plus 50,000 plus 10,000, and the amount of current liability is 3,20,000 and the amount of current assets is 5,76,000. So we can find out very easily the current ratio. Current ratio equal to 5,76,000 upon 3,20,000, that is 1.8 ratio 1. So we can with the answer we can write the comment that the current ideal current ratio is 2:1, but in the example number 3 the current ratio is 1.8 ratio 1. That is the harmful situation for the company. It means the financial position of the company is not strong. Then in the second concept we have to find out the liquid assets, liquid ratio. And for liquid assets the formula is current assets माइनस इन्वेंट्री माइनस प्रीपेड एक्सपेंसेस. करंट एसेट्स कितनी है बेटे हमारे पास 5,76,000, इसमें से 2,60,000 का हम इन्वेंट्री माइनस कर देंगे और 20,000 का प्रीपेड एक्सपेंसेस माइनस करेंगे तो हमारे पास लिक्विड एसेट्स आ जाएगी 2,96,000. देन द क्विक रेशियो कैन बी फाइंड आउट 2,96,000 upon 3,20,000, that is 0.925% is to 1. And the ideal liquid ratio is 1:1, so the financial position of the company is not strong. इसी के साथ ही बेटा एग्जाम्पल नंबर 5 हम लेके चलते हैं. इन द एग्जाम्पल नंबर 5 हमारे पास आइटम है टोटल एसेट्स, फिक्स्ड एसेट्स, नॉन करंट इन्वेस्टमेंट, शेयर होल्डर फंड एंड नॉन करंट लाइबिलिटी. और इसमें हमें करंट रेशियो फाइंड आउट करनी है. एंड द फॉर्मूला टू फाइंड आउट द करंट एसेट करंट रेशियो इक्वल टू करंट एसेट्स अपॉन करंट लायबिलिटी। तो इसमें हमारे पास टोटल एसेट्स में से अगर हम फिक्स एसेट्स माइनस कर देते हैं और नॉन करंट इन्वेस्टमेंट यानी कि टोटल एसेट्स में से हम सारी एसेट्स माइनस कर दें तो हमारे पास करंट एसेट्स आ जाएगी। करंट एसेट इक्वल टू टोटल एसेट्स माइनस फिक्स एसेट्स माइनस नॉन करंट इन्वेस्टमेंट। सो 8 lakh minus 5 lakh 40 minus 1 lakh 10. So the 1 lakh 50,000 is the amount of current assets and the current liability equal to एसेट साइड और लाइबिलिटी साइड इक्वल होता है बेटा। जब टोटल एसेट साइड दिया हुआ तो ये टोटल लाइबिलिटी की भी वैल्यू है। सो करंट लाइबिलिटी कैन बी फाइंड आउट टोटल एसेट्स माइनस शेयर होल्डर फंड माइनस नॉन करंट लाइबिलिटी। तो टोटल एसेट्स में से जितनी भी लाइबिलिटी आपको गिवन है शेयर होल्डर फंड की फॉर्म में या नॉन करंट लाइबिलिटी की फॉर्म में आप माइनस कर दीजिए तो आपके पास करंट लाइबिलिटी आ जाएगी। 8 lakh minus 6 lakh minus 80,000, then 1 lakh 20,000 is the current liability and the current ratio equal to 1 lakh 50 minus 1 lakh 20, 1.25 is to ratio 1. So student, this was the liquidity ratio and the concept is current ratio and the quick ratio with the two example number 3 and example number 4. बेटा नेक्स्ट वीडियो में हम करंट रेशियो और क्विक रेशियो के कुछ क्वेश्चंस और करेंगे। टिल देन यू हैव टू कंप्लीट योर बैक एक्सरसाइज क्वेश्चंस अप टू क्वेश्चन नंबर 8। थैंक यू।